Dearest Marion, here it is Friday night and the last day of August. The time just goes by. I started to type your letter this morning while I was at work, but someone else wanted to use the typewriter. So I will try and write to you tonight. I didn't receive any mail today. I'm here in the tent by myself tonight. Everyone else has gone to the show. The radio is on in the next tent. They just played the song, I Love You. I enjoyed listening to the radio, so I will close for tonight. I'll send you my love. God bless and keep you. Good night and sweet dream. Always love, Ralph. P.S. I sure would enjoy to have a chat with you. How about it?
I didn't talk about it for years and years and years.
Tell me the stories, Grandpa.
Nobody was interested in it anyway.
Tell me about the war, Grandpa.
The people of the Mohawk Valley in Herkimer County have become acquainted with the sacrifice of war since the earliest days of our nation. The American Revolution was fought right here, and its rich heritage preserved as a remembrance for all. But during the next hour, you're going to meet some of the people, some of the World War II veterans who've been raising families and running businesses and educating our youth. They have farmed our land, they assembled in our factories, and they've contributed to our Mohawk Valley communities as professionals and volunteers for more than half a century since the end of their war years. They may be your neighbors, your co-workers, or your own family members. And now they step forward to share their stories, some never before told. Lest we forget how our fathers and mothers, our grandfathers and grandmothers in Herkimer County fought to save the world.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Being a Pearl Harbor veteran, we always talk about Pearl Harbor. And the people have the concept that all that there was is Pearl Harbor. And we see the ships, and that was it. They don't realize the damage that was done to the bombers at Herkimer Field, to Wheeler Field, to Bellows Field, to Kaneohe Bay. All of that was just as destructive as Pearl Harbor, but you only hear Pearl Harbor.
Well, December 7th came. And we were pacifists before on December 6th, but after that Pearl Harbor thing, we were all ready to go in. And we just exited that school. Every man that I know of wanted to get in as fast as they could.
Everybody was ready to go anyway, even join up. And because I know right after Pearl Harbor, we were down in General Herkimer. It was a beautiful day. And General Herkimer home, a couple of us fellows were down there and walking around the grounds when we heard on the radio. And so right away, well, they're going to get us, so let's join up.
Americans, when they got the news that Pearl Harbor was bombed, many may not have known where exactly Pearl Harbor was. All they really knew is that, American soldiers had been attacked on American territory, and they were angry over that.
As a kid, everybody, was just oblivious that anything going on, and all of a sudden it was a Sunday. Seems to me it was a cold day with no snow when the word came that Pearl Harbor, and back then people didn't really know much what was Pearl Harbor, or maybe even Hawaii was so distant.
When the Japanese bombed and torpedoed, then they came around and then they machine gunned Herkimer Field, strafed it. And some of the fellows were killed in bed in that very wing that I was living. One of the fellows was sleeping, he just woke up, he said, "Are you going to church?" "Wait a minute, I'll go with you."
While I was waiting for him to get there, that's when we heard the planes come. So I opened the screen up on the second floor, because I was on the second floor, and we saw these planes coming from Honolulu direction. And we thought, well, you know, the base is almost shut down, people aren't passing, where are these planes coming from? Well, then as they got closer, we could see the red circle. Well, remember the red circle from the ships that would come into Honolulu Harbor. So we said, God, these got to be Japanese, but how did they get here? Well, as they flew over the barracks toward Pearl Harbor, or we ran to the other side of the barracks, and so we saw the first torpedoes drop, and then explosion after explosion. And the sound that I'll never forget, living on the farm, if a cow was stuck in the mud, you hear it moo, trying to get out. They get exhausted trying to get out. That's what some of those horns were in the ships that I heard. It moo, and all I could think of was a cow stuck there, and here's these ships. We're here. We can't move. We can't get enough energy up or fire up enough to get out of it. They just have to take it. I'll never forget it. What a song. We ran down so fast and knocked the screen door off at the bottom of the step, and I just stood there. Because that picture that I have over there, that's what I saw. I was looking at that big barracks that I came out of. The strafing was so tremendous that they hit that flag and that flag was torn. Because in that picture there, I could see that flag. And all I could think of was my dad going through these terrible battles in World War I and what he must have gone through. And we went from a peacetime situation to war combat, live combat, immediately. The tension after it was worse than during the raid.
Over a year before Pearl Harbor happened, the United States was President Roosevelt was slowly moving America towards war.
They said we were going to England. How we were going? Well, we were going on a boat. What the hell boat were you going to get on? He says, the Queen Elizabeth, which was a brand new boat, hadn't even been finished yet. And we got on it, and 22,000 men in it.
And then we were put on the Queen Elizabeth. 18,000 men. And we slept in shifts.
Got on the Queen Elizabeth and took off for overseas. They never told us where we were going or anything, so got on that ship. It was quite a sight.
The battle's o'er, and peace is all around you. Sleep, soldier boy, sleep on.
I went over on the Queen Mary. It took us 5 days. We landed in Glasgow, Scotland. We were supposed to get more training. This was in the Battle of Bulge. We were supposed to get more training in England, and we just went down through England on a train to Southampton, got on LSTs and went over to Le Havre, France. Got on boxcars and went up to Luxembourg, and that's where they separated us in different outfits, different divisions. And I got the 26th Division, 328th Infantry, Company M. And then right in Luxembourg, that's where we went right on the line.
Fought the Battle of the Bulge. That was a tough one. The Germans, they had their tanks in the first place, right off, the best place that they had. I don't know what happened, went wrong, but they got.
It was either the 8th or 9th day. This one fellow was on the boat with us, got killed. That's how quick. It was in the Battle of the Bulge, and they needed replacements, and that's what we were, was replacements. Well, it all happened so quick. I mean, you were just trying to, stay alive and everything. You know what I mean?
I had my brother Ross, the younger brother. He was killed over there in World War II in the Battle of the Bulge.
The Battle of the Bulge. That was terrible. We moved right up just outside of Brussels, Belgium, and it was cold. We pitched a pup tent, another guy and I, and we got some hay from the farmer, from the French, or from the Belgian farmer. We waited till our 101st Airborne was encircled there in Belgium. We waited till they got freed, and then we went in and got the wounded out of there and took them out to the hospitals.
On December 16th, which happened to be my birthday, for the first time I saw German jets. They had them. And one rocket plane. That's how they opened the doggone Battle of the Bulge at us. Well, it was snowing. Oh, boy. Something like the snow we had last year here, last winter. It was deep. You dug a hole in the snow. It wasn't bad then, you know. You were in the snow. You didn't even get down to the dirt. And this was your foxhole.
Biggest battles we got into, we were headed for the Rhine River. And so before we got there, what had happened, we captured this pillbox. And it was a big German pillbox. And there was about, it would hold up maybe 200 or 300 people in there, concrete pillbox. But I can remember it was real cold, and we could only stay on guard duty about an hour. So we put you on guard duty an hour, and meanwhile you had to sleep in that hour. Take about 15 minutes to get to your position, and light 30, and they were trying to defend the pillbox. And I was telling about a situation where they had this flag, Nazi flag that flew over it, and I was able to get that. And so what they were telling about this one. When I was saying the German fired in particular, I first mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, and their shells went forward. So we had two guys in the foxhole, and the sergeant was telling them to keep their heads down. Well, the one guy didn't keep his head down just about the time a shell came along and took his head right off. The other guy went completely nuts. And I think a day or two later, they told me I had frozen feet again. So they sent me back, and the guy signed my big German swastika for me. I was sent to a hospital in Luxembourg.
I know we were at the Rhine River. We crossed the Rhine River, and then we went to Hanoi, Germany, and later on, after we didn't meet too much resistance, we used to ride on the tanks sometimes. And then we'd come to like a village or something, if they had white flags out, if we started to run, if there was maybe SS there, and they'd start firing at us, and they'd have us back up, and then the tanks would do a good job. They'd shell the town, and I know a lot of them, they'd start fires and everything. And then we had to cross the Rhine River. I had 3 or 4 ambulances behind me. I was leading them. And we had to go across on a pontoon bridge at night, across the Rhine River. That was scary. But as luck would have it, a German plane came over and dropped a flare. And that gave me light so I could see where I was going.
But anyway, it was early in the morning, and we decided we were going to cross the Rhine River. And of course, as I say, we got in the boats, and we got about 200 or 300 yards off the air, and all of a sudden, it was just like a football field lit up with flares. And here we were, sitting ducks out there. Every boat except ours, it's Company A, Company B, and Company C made the initial attack going overseas. Every boat except ours got hit. The boat next to us, everybody got hit. And a wounded sergeant, pulled that boat down the river. I don't know how he did it, about 4 or 5 miles. He got the Silver Star for that. He should have got the Congressional Medal as far as I was concerned.
We were just at the Rhine. We knew we were going to cross the Rhine. So, in typical fashion, the American artillery opened up at 4 in the morning. There was one continuous loud sound. That was worse than Normandy. Our artillery, I think they had every tank, every doggone gun they could get. and they were bombarding the other side of the line. We crossed on a pontoon bridge, pontoon, whatever you want to call it.
But we made it on the other side of the river eventually. And of course it was pitch dark, couldn't see what we were doing. And we eventually fought our way up on top of the hill, and just a matter of I don't remember too much about it, but I know that it was a case of sometimes just shooting. In fact, the guy next to me was firing so fast he wore out an M1 rifle. He bore it out, he burned it out.
Well, it was real difficult, and we didn't meet many civilians, but when we did, like in a town, boy, they didn't want anything to do us. They were strictly Nazis, and they wouldn't even, we had to be careful or they'd go after us. Very difficult. In fact, I didn't think I really didn't know whether to come here or not and talk about it. I never told a lot of these things to my wife or children or anything.
Your journey is ended, your work here is done. Sleep, soldier boy, and rest.
Emotion floods these men who recount the days of their toughest battles and their greatest losses.
I went up to GQ. My Radio Shack was my place. And the next thing, I'm sitting there with my typewriter. Torpedo hit right below me. Auxiliary engine room. That's when you hit the auxiliary engine room, you're hitting the nerve just like you shot me, my heart. And that's what the auxiliary engine room is for a ship. When that explosion, I hit the overhead. I just flew. I mean, right below. I don't know if you ever know what an explosion is like, but it knocked me out. And here I'm just laying on the deck here, and everything is dark. And I crawl out there into the wheelhouse. And here's the skipper is giving out all kinds of orders, and the flames, everything burning, right midships, explosions, it just was a hell. You get a lot of people in one bunch, and they got no place to go in the fire, and they're screaming, and so I went below decks. So, abandoned ship, the doctor, is taking care of these poor guys, and they're burnt and everything else. They need help. He had to try to do the best he could. So I, with Assistant Navigator, and I fire all over the place. And these poor guys, this one guy says, gee whiz, he says, I haven't got a life jacket. He says, gee, could you find me a life jacket? I says, oh, gee, I can't help you. These guys are just begging. I says, what are you going to do? So we jumped in the water, flames and everything else, this Assistant Navigator and I. So we had to clear the flames and everything out. So we got out past the fire. So 42 degrees the water was. I was moving around, because to now, I say that's the way you'll keep alive. But the Assistant Navigator told me, he says, don't shout. He said, nobody's going to help you. So I just shut up.
The Japs did such a job on us. They sent 4 cruisers, and we didn't even get a shot off. We lost, thousands of men. The next day, there was 1,000 stretcher cases came aboard the ship I was on. And we lost 3 of our cruisers, I think, and an Australia cruiser and a couple of destroyers, quite a mess. And one of the things I remember about, of course, there's so many, and we buried the first day a lot at sea, and the second day not as many. But this one guy was laying in the passageway on a stretcher that a heavy shell had hit him in the chest. Of course, if it hit him here, it wiped him out. But hit him a glancing blow, and his ribs were right out to the side, and you could see his heart beating. And he had a lot of guts, really. And we finally got a hold of a medic and said, hey, do something for this guy. And they did. He walked off.
Well, they sent two of my buddies and I on a reconnaissance patrol to find out what was going on. Well, we found out, but we never got back to tell anybody. The Germans had taken their tanks from the Russian front and put them into St. Vith, Belgium. And there was, I don't know, hundreds of them. And as, trying to get this in order. Anyway, the tanks came into St. Vith and lumbering in. And as they come up to a house, they would put their guns down and blow the house up. And they blew a whole row of them up. And when they got to the house that the three of us were in, we decided we better get out of the house because we would be blown up.
It surprised me. One of the towns, one of the small towns, it sounded like maybe like Herkimer, Erin, called St. Vith. And to my shocking amazement, there was one wall of one house that was standing there. Can you imagine? One wall of one house that was all that was left in the village. It was just like going to a dump and just seeing one wall of one house in its whole village. So it's kind of a shocker. I mean, you could just, then it started to sink into your head that, you know, this is not you're not going to a ball game, you're going to something else.
So we got out of the house, went down into the area there, and that's where I first met Herb Linke, the tank commander of the German Panzer outfit. And he captured us. They started marching us back in, and I can remember when, if you fell out of march, I mean, nobody waited for you. In fact, you were shot there or bayoneted. I mean, you just laid there and that was it. And I started to fall. And this voice came to me, and he said, Bob, you can make it. And someone took my hand. It was my Lord Jesus Christ. Grabbed my hand, and I was able to continue that march.
But that was my first thought, is when I was a kid, and how my mother cradled me, and I was secure. And this time I was out there not knowing what's going to happen to me. And that's the last thing I remember.
We got word that there was 72 torpedo bombers headed for us. They're twin engines. And so they got underway. They put all of our ships in two columns to get out to sea. And we was looking up for airplanes, and they just didn't show up. And all of a sudden somebody said, here they come. And they skipped over the Florida Island, which is the one across from Guadalcanal, right down in the water, and they were so close that the props were kicking up. Well, the cruisers, we had quite a few cruisers with us. And I don't know, they probably didn't have time to think, but they started firing at these airplanes coming down through the two columns of ships. And I'm sure it was noon there, or batteries. I'm sure that the concussions were knocking the planes down as they were dropping like fleas. I don't think they were just a concussion bringing them down. But one of them swung off and was headed right for us. I was up on the searchlights. And he was firing some machine guns, and I ducked behind the mast. It goes all the way up through both. And he crashed right below, one deck below me, and the fire came up over. So I went over the side. Back then we had these life jackets that you squeeze and they blow up. Well, I swam as hard as I could away from the ship, figuring they would go down and take me with it. And the ammunition was exploding all around from our guns. So I got out quite a ways and I reached down and squashed this thing, and I looked up and here come a destroyer bailing right down on me, and I thought, holy Toledo, you probably run over me. But he didn't. I could see the screws start to back up, and they threw me a life ring, hauled me up on, in fact, in the stuff I've got, a picture of that destroyer that picked me up, which was later sunk. But another second destroyer tied onto the front of us with probably an 1.5, 2-inch cable, steel cable. And they started to tow us over towards Florida Island. And Melbourne started to got word that there was another air attack coming. And so everybody left us except this destroyer that was towing us, and their men came up with axes and literally kept hammering at that cable until it finally snapped and they took off, and we were sitting there alone and on fire.
We were issued one blanket, and I had the only needle in the prison camp that I knew of, and I never sewed before in my life. I couldn't do it. But anyway, I took in socks and sewed the socks were worn holes from them. And I took the thread out of the end of the blanket and used that to sew the socks up. And guys would swap cigarettes, or they'd swap stuff to eat for cigarettes. I mean, that's how bad that cigarette thing can be to you. I swapped it for something to eat, tried to get, in fact, I lost about, I guess, 70, 80 pounds. We had bread that was made out of sawdust, and also had raw horse meat, which had turned black. And we were able to cook the horse meat some. We had a little fireplace, and we cooked that to be able to eat it, because it really was tough eating that raw horse meat. After the Yanks crossed the Rhine River, the Germans knew it, and they didn't want us to get liberated. So they loaded us in boxcars and started shipping us back into Germany.
Next thing I know, I'm on LST 531 down in the cruise quarters and on a mess deck. See, that's where we ate our food. And I had blankets. Oh crap, I had a stack of blankets, army blankets over me, shaking like a leaf. I thought I raised up and looked around. I says, I must be in heaven. I said, you know, I last remembered I was out there in that water freezing. Next thing, a guy comes along to me. He said, you know, he said, you're a lucky guy. And he said, you know, he said, you were piled with the dead when they were picking them up.
And then they started marching us back into Germany again. It was during this march that the three of us escaped. We hid in this barn. It was a farmer's barn. It was a farm, and it also had a lumber mill. And I can remember hiding under a haystack on the side of this piece of machine. It said McCormick Deering right on the side of it. And when they came in with these machine guns, they machine gunned the hay mow and all over, and then they had flashlights looking. And I know my eyes don't shine in the dark because I can see that flashlight, the light right there. Of course, we were so dirty and hair and everything that I guess we blended in with everything. But they never saw me, or if they did, they walked away. And then the Americans finally got into the town. And we, of course, rushed up to them, and they didn't know who we were, but they must have known we weren't, that we were prisoners of war because by the looks of us. But anyway, they took us to Army Hospital.
The captain did. He said, Butler. Of course, our PA system, everything's out, and he's hollering, sound general quarters. And that gives you quite a thought. Yeah. I guess we lost about 15 guys dead and a lot burned. because of the fire. But I saw a lot of men come out of the engine room that looked just as healthy as you and drop over dead. I suppose their lungs are seared. Some of my good friends. In fact, that's another story anyhow. I cried like a baby.
We lost 749 lives. See, that's when I got torpedoed. That's what was lost. 700, because here we were a mile away from the British shore, and the orders were given, pick up no survivors. See, on account of this goof up and everything else, Eisenhower kept it quiet for 40 years. You don't hear anything of Exercise Tiger. My kids, I never mentioned nothing to them, and they never even opened up a page of the book. Not a page, they never even read it. I don't say nothing to them because I want to forget it.
You're the first one that ever heard this. I just wanted to forget it. I mean, it isn't something, I mean, I've told you a few of the bad parts, but there's some things that I would rather forget.
Well, it didn't for a long time. Now my daughter says, once you started, you don't know enough, shut up. No, I didn't talk about it for years and years and years.
The sun's gone down, and darkness has enclosed you. Sleep, soldier boy, sleep on.
If you see veterans groups, and they're all over, VFW and American Legion, the reason they're special and they have these groups is they have formed this special camaraderie, and they feel comfortable with each other. They talk the same lingo. They've had the same experiences, but they're proud. They're proud of their military service, and a lot of times it's not really, people don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear about what you did while you were in the service, but veterans like to get together and talk, and they feel comfortable talking about it. My mother frequently talked about women being in during World War II and what it was like, and the things they had to take jobs over from men so they could go out to sea. And it was a whole new breaking ground for women during World War II. They had just established women in the service, and they weren't quite sure what to do with them. And so it was just the whole start of women in the service. So it was a new ground she was breaking. We had what was known as the WAS, that's the Women's Auxiliary Service Pilots. And they delivered the new planes to Army bases, transported troops, and tested new planes. The WACS, W-A-A-C-S, they were the Women's Auxiliary Corps Services, and then you had the WAVES, the Women's Auxiliary Volunteer for Emergency Services. You had the Army and Navy Nurses Corps, the Marines. Now the Marines, they were unique. They didn't give a special name for the women that were affiliated with them. They were just known as Marines. I thought that was neat. And the Coast Guard, they were known as SPARs.
But everybody did seem to really pull together, and not a lot of discord and belly aching about everything. That the war effort was the utmost.
The women, besides doing their household things, they went into factories because the men went into war. There was a shortage of workers, so the women had to go to work. And they worked in Remington Arms. They made Remington M1903, A4 sniper rifles, shotguns, sportsman skeet grade shotguns. And skeet shooting was very important. It was used for training, and it was for training of the air gunners, so they could shoot down enemy airplanes. Good for practice.
Back then, there weren't plastic bags for blood, and of course blood drives became ever so necessary. That I helped out, the Boy Scouts helped out, And can you believe back then they used rubber tubing, plastic tubing wasn't invented yet, and glass bottles to collect blood. We as scouts washed out the tubing so that it could be sterilized to be used another time for blood. The nearest thing I never forget, right on the main street in Park Ave in Herkimer was like a vacant lot at the time, and he put a great big fence up, chicken wire, and aluminum. Everybody's aluminum. Throw it over the fence and fill this right up on the corner of Main Street in Park Ave, with a mountain of aluminum. Then somebody take it away, and it was all reprocessed for a war effort.
We had ration tickets ourselves as soldiers in service, so we could only get so many cigars a week, we could only get so many beers a week and so forth. So we were going through a rationing for ourselves. And yet the people at back home, no matter how strapped they were for gasoline and cigarettes and everything else, they would send it overseas to their sons and daughters. I mean, the people, it's the old story, the people at home suffer more than the soldiers do.
A mother's arms are waiting to enfold you.
So finally on June 5th, we boarded ships, we had been on a ship for about 5 days, but we boarded LCVPs, and that was 11 o'clock at night, and we were going to land at 6:30 the next morning in the second wave, but it ended up that we were all in the first wave. There wasn't any waves. Things were the crossing was so bad that the waves were 8 to 10 feet high, and everybody was sick. And we ended up something like a mile from where we were scheduled to land, and then we were, thank God we did, because the Germans were much more entrenched where we were supposed to land.
4,000 ships in the Armada. You can imagine that none of us were hit. Our C Company ship had a Seaman blow the bow off the ship, but nobody was hurt. We had the 1st Division on the left, 29th Division right in front of us, which I had been in Washington, which was interesting, and I knew some of the guys. And they had a battle there and lost 2,200 men. It was one of the bloodiest battles, I guess, the United States has been involved in. Nobody could do anything. The tide came in, and people got drowned, they couldn't move, and the medics couldn't get to them. It was chaos for about 10 hours.
I went on the side of the ship on the rope ladder, and I got on my ambulance and drove off onto the beach. The MPs kept hollering, "Get off the beach, get off the beach. You get your butt shot off," and so forth. So we got off the beach and gathered in this field. We stayed there till we got oriented. And the next day we went right to work. Hauling wounded.
We stormed the beach, and everybody was dropping. They said it was the easy beach, but we lost something I learned later, something like 390 men that first wave. And if you can believe this, I got lost all alone with 40,000 men on the beach because I don't know how I did, but I all of a sudden was all alone carrying 2 boxes of ammo, 250 rounds of each.
You're out there with a lot of people around you, but you're alone, you know what I mean? You're like an orphan.
Well, in 3 days, we had a 260-man company, and we were down to 67 men. And we had firefights all the time. The Germans were attacking us with
artillery, the German 88s, and we pushed ahead until we got to St. Mary Grease, and that was where the paratrooper in the longest day hung on the church steeple. And we were on these trucks, and the Germans, we were on a country road, and all of a sudden two shells came in, and we knew the second, the third and fourth shell was going to come in real close to us. So at that time we said, well, we'll get out of our trucks. And we laid in the ditch like that, and I was laying there with our gunner, and the third shell came in real close to us, and I said, Jack, I don't like it here, let's move. We moved about 10 feet away. And where I laid, where we moved, a buddy of mine went in there, and he got killed. We lost 20-some guys on one shell.
So we stayed in Algiers, in a big three-story building, and started making the maps. And we had a gun up on the roof, aircraft gun, and I was in charge of that. So, and the Germans used to come over about 3 or 4 times a week. So this one night, they came over and they blew up a barracks just above us, South African troops, and killed 300 of them. And then one other time, I'm up on the roof, and when the Germans came over the plane, and somebody jumped out in a parachute, and all the lights were on him. He's coming down, and all the guns in the harbor just boom, and he just disappeared.
It's a big movie. When you're in the middle of it, things happen so fast. You're detached from the moral aspect of it. For instance, when we landed in Holland, there were 14 tow ships shot down right over the LZ, and you'd see the fellows bail out of the tow ship. It was on fire, and the chute would catch on the empennage, the back end of the plane as it went in, and it would drag the pilot in with it. We had a lot of that going on. But you have to detach yourself as much as possible.
You volunteer for something, and you do the best you can. You figure that, well, somebody's watching over you or whatever. You're fortunate because you get so many close calls and things that sometimes you're in that hole and you move, and the next thing you know, somebody jumps in there and they're gone.
In the Army, you never know when it's going to come, the shell. So you go to sleep. First of all, you say your prayer in the morning, you say it at night, and you feel better.
You prayed a lot. I realized.
You just prayed. That's all. And there's the one that got me through, the crucifix up there. Some friend of mine there from Frankfurt, his tank got hit, and the poor guy, he jumped out. The lieutenant, he was in the tank, and he got killed. My buddy from Frankfurt, he jumped out. He got down in the well to hide there, and they shot him down in there.
My best friend was killed going into Holland. When you look out here, and the gliders are a staggered situation, 2 tow ships here, and this glider loses a wing, and this is your best friend, Jesse Ferguson from Burke Burnett, Texas. I'll never forget it. All I remember seeing that glider go down into the ground. And yeah, you lose friends. I guess it depends what your mettle is. It depends on how strong you are, you know.
In December 1943, the Miami steamed into Pearl Harbor in May 1944, and the next month began her fighting career. Operations in June included task force strikes against Saipan.
From roughly September of 1942 to February of 1943, you had various battles in the Solomon Islands, including the Battle of Guadalcanal, which was the first American invasion of Japanese-held territory.
You know, you see a flock of crows or birds. Well, that's just like the jet planes coming at us. Because, see, our job was to protect the carriers. And so they came after us like a swarm of bees. And we got, one went over the bow, one went over the stern, and we got two of them. And they got two of our carriers.
We were on a patrol one time, and we stopped in a clearing, and there was a Jap sniper way up in a high tree, 30, 40 feet up, I guess, and he was firing machine gun at us, and I could see, as he come down through, we hit the deck, and I could see that line of fire coming right towards me as he come along like this, and I froze. I couldn't move. All I had to do was crawl up like that, up this bank. I was leaning against the bank. And after he got done firing, I looked down, and right where my dungaree jacket, there was a bullet hole on each side where he just went through like that. That's the closest I remember getting wounded.
We were brand new in the Marine Corps, and went into this division, and I didn't even see a mortar fired until I got to Guadalcanal.
Well, they told us dig foxholes. Well, I went down about 6 inches, and it was coal rock. And you don't dig very good in coal rock. It's hard. So that was good enough for me, until we started hearing these shells crashing. It turned out there was a cruiser throwing shells at us. And there was anti-personnel shells. And this one hit a coconut tree right near me, probably, I would say maybe 20 feet from me, about 20 feet up, and snapped the tree off, but the shrapnel scattered around and got two of our guys. And I heard this one guy, he's right close to me, it is to you. I heard him groan a couple of times, but didn't know what happened until morning, and it killed him. Shrapnel got him right in the abdomen. And but you all see us dig in. We really dug. And what made it more eerie was, it was misty rain, and their spotter from the cruiser dropped flares. And as those flares come floating down like this, come down like this, and you're looking up at them like that, it's really eerie. But we had no defense against this cruiser. The cruiser just lobbed those shells in there. That happened a lot of times when I was there. We just didn't have any naval defense.
There were quite a few casualties in Guadalcanal, yeah. Yeah. I remember one, they thought they thought that the Japanese were going to surrender a certain area, and they sent a detachment up to him, and they slaughtered them all, except one or two guys who went back. And I could tell you, too, that if you ran across a Jap wanting to surrender, he would say, "Kimono nagete." They take your clothes off, because we used to carry the grenades. So we used to learn a certain amount of Japanese.
And it was pouring down rain, and in fact, according to the book, I didn't know it until afterwards, that it was a good thing it did rain, because they held the Japs up a little bit. But that night, the guy named Basilone fired his machine gun, and he killed Jap after Jap. As one layer of Japs would get killed, some more would crawl over the top, and he'd shoot some more, kill some more. And next morning, they were stacked about 5 high, like cordwood, and he got a Medal of Honor for that. Unfortunately, he went on and come back to the States and went in the 4th Division and got killed in Iwo, I think.
But Iwo Jima was altogether different. You see, there were no civilians on Iwo, you didn't have to deal with that. And but even when the LSTs, I was with the assault troops on Iwo, and when we hit the beach, of course the whole thing was, it was maybe like hell itself. I don't know. I knew now I didn't have an officer left. I'm looking around for somebody to take over, and it's very disorganized. It's an organized situation when you start, but nothing works. It's very disorganized. My radio man was over here. He's kind of a little dry horse, and I had down a little bit. And I said, I get over to the radio man. I get down. And I jumped for the radio man, and just as I went for the radio man to get some, I see the flash. That was the end of the war for me.
Well, right towards the end of the war, we were in Czechoslovakia. We ran into I don't know what they call it, DP lager, anyway, those prisoners. And, I'll tell you, it just makes you sick. I mean, the people that were starving, the German soldiers had taken off before we got there, but some of the persons I know, we had like K rations with us, and we give them the K rations and they'd tear the paper right apart to get to the food. They were starving. Geez, it just made you, made you sick.
Working with displaced persons and working with Holocaust survivors, I got so many personal stories of one-on-one that bring tears to your eyes, and those that feel that the Holocaust didn't take place, 100% wrong. I had the opportunity to visit the Dachau concentration camp, and it's an eye-opener.
The Commandant's wife, they referred to as a bitch of Buchenwald, and what she would do is she'd take some of the prisoners and make sure they had a tattoo. Take them on as lovers, then have them gassed for her husband got home from where we went, and then she'd make lampshades out of these tattoos. I actually have seen those, so it's true.
But I did meet many people. Met the burgomaster of Dachau, the assistant burgomaster, and number 2 man who told us his personal story on how the military came in at that time and took him out of bed and put him in military clothes and had to take him to the concentration camp where 268,000 people were cremated, murdered, and whatever. So it's something that stuck in my mind as a young fella, 18 years old. You're never exposed to these things.
We went over to where the barracks were, and they had a lot of displaced persons. These were technical people. They got them from all kinds of countries and everything else. And out in the field, out in the next to the house, there are over 3,000 people dead. In various parts, they have no clothes, or they have clothes. They're men, they're women, and everything else. They're just piled up.
I guess the fact that it stamped out the whole thing was important to me. I saw a couple of concentration camps, and they were all that they said they were and more. And I never could understand how people could get that way and so inhuman,
But before we got to leave, they put us on Saipan, and we were able to spend 2 weeks there. And in that part of the cemetery there, we were able to go. I found some of the fellows from Herkimer that I knew that were killed, and the grave sites there.
A couple of my cousins didn't come out too good. They didn't get hurt or anything, but they psychologically they didn't do too good. They had it on their mind all the while.
I think that's probably the worst part is the mental condition, because I don't see how a body can stand that stuff, and still, because you're not the same.
Well, I guess they told me afterwards that I was quite nervous, and my cousins would say, "Gee, you're not the same guy that I was when you left. When you go for 3 years."
And people started to go out into the streets and start to celebrate. About 5,000 people started to choke the downtown streets of Herkimer.
Faith, family, and friends. If you have that, you have everything in life.
I got off the train and started walking out. All at once I see my mother, my dad, and my sister there. Oh, was I happy to see that? I think that was the happiest day I ever had. They hugged me and kissed me and wouldn't let me go. I'm so happy we were home.
Coming home under the Golden Gate Bridge. We knew that time we knew we were home. Yeah, that was the greatest feeling.
Some of them, we started a poker game on the way home, and some of them had some money when they got home, and some of them didn't. But most of us didn't have any.
And going by the Statue of Liberty, I had goose pimples. I got goose pimples. And it was, you can't describe it. The fireboats in New York, of course, I'd never been to New York anyway, and had never seen the Statue of Liberty. And, you just can't believe it, Really, they treated us fairly.
The people were great. People in the United States just welcomed us with open arms, and unlike the Vietnam War, And I appreciated all that, and we felt fulfilled that we had done our job, and that was it.
Well, it gave their lives so that they could have free speech and do things the way they want to. And if we don't do that, I think we're going to be in trouble again.
Be thankful that they went over, because I think Hitler was bad, and if we hadn't done something about him, I don't think a lot of us would even be here today.
I mean, we're living at a time that was literally created by what these men and women did in World War II. We would not have the blessings of freedom that we have today had it not been for the sacrifice that they made on foreign battlefields. And many are still making that sacrifice today.
Well, my name is at the top, Stephen Pashontek. There's to you who answered the call
of your country and served in its armed forces to bring about the total defeat of the enemy, I extend the heartfelt thanks of a grateful nation. As one of the nation's finest, you undertook the most severe task one can be called upon to perform. Because you demonstrated the fortitude, resourcefulness, and calm judgment necessary to carry out that task, we now look to you for leadership and example in further exalting
our country in peace. Here is Truman, the White House.
It was good. I told him the way life was.
When I did get to meet Ronald Reagan, regular G.I. Joe.
Dinah Shore. It's the first woman's voice we'd heard in months.
The lights floodlight went on, and Irving Berlin stepped out of the stage.
Total of 76 years of active service in my family. 2 of my boys were in the Navy.
It's like you go in as a boy, you come out as a man.
I never figured I'd be this age.
My grandchildren are more interested than my son would be.
I have a granddaughter. She wrote a poem about me.
Yeah, they asked because I didn't like some of the taxes. I hadn't liked that.
My one granddaughter, she wrote up an essay on me. She had to do in school on it. So she asked me for things.
Kyle, I said, how much did you ask me? I said, I love my lives or something. But I told him God's honest truth. So, Grandpa, he said, I got a story to write about now.
I learned bravery from my grandpa. He showed me how to be strong. He fought and lived through the war. My grandpa was and still is a brave man.